Hi, welcome to the August 12th edition of our resourcing topics. So our last topic was about places. Angela reported to me that for her, it was really important to hear that the feeling state of how she feels when she's in her best and favorite place has a place within her body where that lives. So she's really been able to be in touch with that and how valuable it is because she can't always get to her favorite bestest place as much as she would prefer. So yeah, so thank you, Angela, for sharing that, that there is something very special about that fact that you can access that feeling state inside your own body. Yes, 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 yes. And as you can see, I'm doing this in my vehicle and a week late because that's kind of how the summer is going, you guys. So this, we'll see. My intention is still to do the next resourcing topic in 2 weeks, but if it needs to go to three, I think we're all going to be okay with that. Today's topic is food that nourishes our body. And I've kind of been reflecting on uh, why I've delayed this topic, but I think it's just because I had to get really clear in my own system around what it was that I wanted to speak about in regards to food. Um, and probably because I know there's so much for myself to yet still unpack around this whole relationship. And so, yeah, I just wanted to be open and clear and honest with you guys about that. But I have, um, yeah, I mean, ultimately, as with all of our topics, I hope it's evident that I'm never kind of proposing that I'm any kind of expert on any of this stuff, but I have encountered some ideas and perspectives and lived through some of my own stuff around it. And I'm just hoping that the things that I bring up in conversation around it are important jumping off points for you. That so that in sharing them, hopefully I'm sparking some additional ideas, additional perspectives for each of you to then explore in your own personal journeys as well. So let's jump right in. So my humble opinion about foods is safety is the most important starting place when it comes to our body's ability to receive nourishment and to digest things well, and to make the best use of what we're taking in and to effectively and efficiently release what we don't need from that. So, like that whole, it's really an aspect of boundary, right? It's really having things come into us, into our system, and certain pieces are going to be fulfilling and nourishing, and certain pieces don't have anywhere to land. And are not for us and can pass right through or pass right by so yeah, our gut tube is literally a boundary. And so we've talked about nervous system being boundary, but our digestive system is for sure a boundary. And so yeah, I think that's all I want to go into around that for now. um so let's go back to safety. Our body cannot prioritize eating and digestion when survival is at stake. So, as much and to what extent we can be aware of what state we're in while we're eating is potentially more important than the specific foods of what we're eating. Um, so we know this. So if you've ever had something relatively dramatic happen in your life, like when there's deep grief after a breakup or any kind of loss, you will lose your appetite. And when you do eat, the food just kind of sits in your gut like a lump. So this is also true when we're in a long-term ongoing state of stress, that there's a certain um, aspect of the food not being able by our physical bodies to be prioritized in terms of how to break it down and digest it. It's just not it's not what our body is putting its resources into. Yeah, so I'd like to share a story around this. I read this in a book like years ago, like we're talking decades ago, and it really stuck with me. So it was a story, it had to do with trauma and how when our body experiences a trauma, our body doesn't necessarily know how to differentiate what um, sensory input was the danger. So then sometimes all of the pieces of sensory input that happened in that moment kind of get highlighted as a potential trigger for danger. So in this specific story, it was a woman was on the phone with her grown child. The child was traveling in a country that was known to be maybe not 100% safe. And in a time where, like before cell phones, where there was limited contact. So the adult child in this other country traveling was able to make contact by phone, so payphone or whatever, and was on the phone with mama. Mama's back at home eating a peach, delighted to be in contact with her child and have that connection point and know that they're safe. And in the conversation, suddenly there's a sound in the background from where her child's calling her. It sounded like a gunshot. The phone line goes dead. And in that moment, her brain is thinking, my child is now dead and has been shot. And so then time passes, the phone rings again, her child's on the other line, child is safe and sound, and the sound in the background was a car backfiring. Um, but the phone lines were like inconsistent, and hence the phone call got dropped. And anyways, um, but her system had already lived an experience of a trauma where she actually thought that her child was shot and died. And and from that moment in time forward, her body, like she was allergic to peaches. So her body reacted to um, the peaches in that way. So I think just to bring some awareness to sometimes our body's response to the foods that we are um, ingesting might have an element of sort of a coupling within our nervous system and some kind of stress or trauma or danger response. Um, yeah. So, I mean, this may or may not be helpful to you in your journey with foods, but it's a story that I wanted to share. And there's also a piece of safety in our system is also feedback loop. So your nervous system state affects your body's ability to maintain healthy gut balance. So, like that balance of the good bacteria, the enzymes, candida, like all that stuff. And also, sometimes the presence of an imbalance in the gut can signal back to your system that your body is in an unsafe state. So, there are times where sometimes if you're doing all of the supplements and additives and all of that thing, if you're not tending to your nervous system state, your body can't make full use of all those extra things that you're adding into your system. But the reverse can sometimes be true, that sometimes adding something to your system to make a change in the gut balance and bring it back into healthier balance can actually help with creating the nervous system state that you desire. So, yeah, just being an awareness of there's a whole system at work here, and it all happens together, and it's always working together, and you can't really, yeah, just please be aware of all of it as one thing, and not just focus on pieces of it because we're not pieces, we're whole. Um, And then, of course, this gets a lot more complex because food is often associated with a sense of connection and safety and comfort and love. So, yeah, so just mentioning all of this and just saying all of this and just bringing all of this into awareness that there is a definite degree of complexity when it comes to our relationships to food. And that just indicates how highly valuable it can be to really explore and really develop awarenesses around what your patterns are, what's happening in your system. This can be really powerful work. Um, for those of you who were part of my Understanding People Pleasing Summit, I had a really great conversation with Laura Folks around our relationship to food. And I, admittedly, in the conversation, I talked about how cocky I was going into that interview because I really didn't think I had many struggles around food. Any times that I wanted to be adhering to a certain diet and needing some willpower around it, I've always been able to have that. However, in talking to her, I did quickly begin to understand that actually there are certain foods that I only let myself have when I feel I deserve it. So there's certain foods that, feel like a treat, but I only let myself have a treat at certain times around just so I was like still sort of maintaining this underlying like reward and punishment pattern around my relationship to food. There's also only certain foods or certain ways that I will eat food that I will only engage in when I'm alone. Like I won't even eat that way in front of a partner or a loved one. And so that's interesting, right? So there's, aspect of shame there, and I don't want people to see like certain ways that I literally like shove food in my face sometimes, or there's certain kinds of food that I eat that I'm like wouldn't admit to in front of people. So I'll just say, it's just worthwhile to pay attention to all of that. Our relationship to food is really closely associated with our relationship to body, especially as women. So body shape, body weight, as well as relationships to nourishment, just in general, relationships to what can be pleasing or pleasant or pleasurable, also relationship to sustenance, also relationship to trusting that we're going to have what we need, also relationship to, like, as I already mentioned, do we allow ourselves to have what we want? Yeah, relationship to punishment and reward. There's just so like it can go on and on. Like that's just the tip of the iceberg. Another piece is it's important to acknowledge that food addiction is a whole other beast compared to any other addictions because you cannot abstain from food. So you have to have it around you. You have to be engaging with it a few times each day to survive. So any issues with control or lack of control when it comes to food requires added layers of support. Um, so yeah, just please, like if that's something that you're dealing with or have ever dealt with or have loved ones who are dealing with, like that's it's other level, right? Um, our food cravings can definitely be a reflection of our nervous system states. So, like our cravings for junk food and sugars can be a sign of a system that is in a sympathetic activation and looking for the quick energy that would be needed for fight or flight, right? So, yeah, somebody had brought that to my attention once, and I was like, I have never thought of that. I thought I was just like trying to stuff down my feelings, like all those things. So, I think naming that is maybe helpful. Um, and of course, there is that aspect of sometimes we're craving a certain kind of food as comfort. Sometimes the food does provide comfort and does have an effect on our nervous system. Sometimes it's a poor substitute for whatever actual connection or actual co-regulation we're trying to seek relief with or through. Um, yeah, and so, just again, being in awareness of when you do have a craving for something and do engage in that craving, um, to what level does it feel fulfilling? To what level are you in touch with what it is that you are actually wanting? Like what's the layer under the behavior, like all those pieces. And then now this is the piece of the conversation that I've really wanted to share. So in my training for craniosacral therapy, I was really shocked to learn that as embryos, we move through all of these developmental stages of being actually so self-sustaining. So, as Cora, the human being, adult in this earth, on this earth, in this world, my nervous system for my entire life pretty much has been really deeply codependent. So it was really a bit of a shock to me, and I almost couldn't comprehend um, learning that my nervous system, like my being, the cells of my body, my physiology has a knowing of me being fully self-sustaining and having had everything I needed within the container of only just what was me, independent of what was mom. So I'm going to share some of these basics with you. Please feel into what this might mean for you and your system. I encourage you to do your own research to like really go into this deeper and our embryological development and what that might mean for you. Yeah, and to feel into what it means for your body's remembered implicit experiences. So these are experiences that are true in our system that we don't have conscious memory of. So once fertilized, so egg meets sperm, there is a period of 5 days where cells are dividing and dividing and dividing, and the energy needed to do so is coming from the egg itself. So there's so much life happening and so much growth happening, and none of it is relying on mom. All of it is contained within you. So by day 5, we're now a blastocyst. and we do require additional nourishment. So that happens through implantation into the uterine wall. And then the placenta begins to develop. And the placenta, you guys, is a completely unique organ all on its own that is co-created by you, your little blastocyst system and mama system. So it's not something, and I don't know why I never thought of this before, but the placenta is not something that is mom. The placenta is something that your system and mom's system build together. It's never like, and then of course it leaves mom's body also like in the birthing system. So your system helps to build the means through which you receive your nourishment all throughout your pregnancy. And so, side note, the placenta continues to support and nourish you throughout the birthing process. So as you come through the birth canal and your face and comes into contact with mom's microbiome, i.e., when mom poops in the birthing process, and there's some residue, like you're meant to be exposed to that. And as that's happening, the placenta immediately begins to build and create the antibodies needed to deal with mama's microbiome. And so as long as the umbilicus remains intact, as the placenta is then being born and squeezed through the birth canal, that what it's just created for you in response to you coming through the birth canal then gets pushed through the umbilicus into your system. That there's that final push of essential nutrients for the world that you're being born into is happening through the umbilicus as the placenta is being birthed and squeezed through the birth canal. We also have the agency in our bodies to move ourselves to nourishment immediately after birth. So I remember as a very young girl watching a documentary about kangaroos, and kangaroos like getting born as these little tiny little tiny little naked little things, and they crawl up and over and into the pouch where they eventually, like everybody knows that kangaroo babies live in their mama's pouch, but they have to crawl there. And I remember thinking that, like, just being so amazed at that. Okay, and I really only just like in the last couple months as an adult human learned that human babies do this also. We just don't give them a chance to, but we're supposed to. So the World Health Organization knows about this and it's a thing. And I'll leave a link for a video about this. But human babies also are meant to be placed on mama's belly and allowed to crawl on their own device. They will be able to locate and crawl up mama's belly and latch themselves onto mama's breast. And when they are given an opportunity to do so, there are decreased issues with latching and drastically decreased, like potentially non-existent colic. So our nervous systems are meant to have that experience of using our own drive and our own motion and our own movement to get ourselves up to the breast and latch on ourselves. And so I'm not just like, it doesn't happen in 5 minutes. It does take time, but newborns' nervous system ability to navigate that. I mean, just think about it, you guys. Like if you had the lived experience memory in your system of getting yourself to that needed nourishment of your own accord, like that is lived experience and connection to sympathetic activation in safety and a sense of your own agency, and I believe would dramatically change so many of our relationships to food and nourishment and just having what we need, and not just nourishment but abundance in general in all the forms, right? And love, money, time, like all of the forms. So many of us have missed out on that developmental experience of moving toward and finding and accessing life-sustaining nourishment on our own agency and our own body's movement. And it does have consequences to our relationship, to our own sympathetic drive, to our own body's wisdom. Yeah, it's a really big deal. And so Yes, whatever it means for you to process that missed experience, if it was a missed experience for you, or if you're a new mama, or if you're going to be a new mama, like, or if you're around someone who's going to be a new mama, like, let's please start sharing this wisdom and this knowledge. Yes, yes. We then continue in our developmental stages to move through experiences of, not fully having access fully having control to our access to milk and formula. So then we are, of course, reliant on our caregivers. But then we also move through other stages of having some agency. So at some point, as toddlers, we get to use our hands to move food to mouth. And we begin to have some agency as to, saying no to certain foods, spitting out certain foods, refusing certain foods. Um, and that continues throughout life, like having, at some point we have access to um have our own jobs and have our own income and make our own purchases, or even just being able to make our own meals from the foods that are available in the house, like just all these developmental stages of changing access to um being sort of dependent and then self-sustaining and then dependent self, like, so there's these waves and there's these stages. um So what does eating well mean? I think it means something different for everyone. It means something different at different stages of your life or different stages of resource, different stages of awareness. There is so much information out there. It all, honestly, I feel is quite conflicting. Um, and you can find a diet to support whatever it is that your beliefs are. But my point of view is it's not important what other people believe is best for you. Please let your system and let your body be the expert for what is right for you. So I have a story about this. It's actually from my days working in the veterinary clinic. So we had this really dedicated owner of a beagle. He loved his little doggy. And at one point, he had been on a flight sitting next to a sales rep from one of the dog food companies. So yes, they make very high quality dog foods, but it was very high protein. And anyway, so this man was, based on the conversation that he had with the sales rep, was feeding his dog this food, but he was like a regular in the vet clinic because his dog had constant diarrhea. So, we did a couple of different tests and we did different treatments and ruled out all the things and all the causes and all, and then finally the vet had to have a conversation with him and be like, look, I'm not going to prescribe any more antibiotics because that's not what's going on with your dog. You need to change your dog's diet. He's like, I have him on the best food. I have him. And she's like, look, uh, yes, your beagle is descended from a wolf. Yes, wolves eat mostly protein. Your beagle has actually been domesticated for thousands of years, and his body is telling you that he cannot digest a high protein diet. And so she had to make a deal with him. She's like, change his food to this food that's less high protein or less protein, and for a certain period of time. And if this doesn't solve it, you're more than welcome to go back, and we can do spend a lot more of your money and do all these other really expensive tests. But he changed the food, and the dog had normal stools afterwards. And so, I mean, that's just, he wanted to do best by his doggy, and he believed this man that this was a really high quality and really great diet for his dog, but his dog's digestive system was telling him different, and finally he listened to his dog's digestive system. So yeah, basically it's the same. Please listen to your body. um like, rather than having a list in your head of, oh, I'm always good with this food, or I really like this food, or um pay attention day by day, moment by moment, after everything that you're consuming. How do you actually feel? How does your body actually feel? How does your body actually function? How bloated is your body? How much energy do you feel you have? Um, and just be aware that your body does have changing needs, and that your body might be giving you information in the moment. So instead of grabbing the food that you're used to grabbing, like, oh, I always sit and have an apple or whatever, like, if you're one of those people. But actually, like before you open the fridge, like what do you actually feel like? Like if you're actually hungry, what do you actually feel like eating? I know for myself, sometimes I'm like, oh, I really actually just want some red meat right now, or maybe it's orange juice, or maybe it's spinach. Like I get these little pings of this is actually what I'm hungry for. Um, and I can trust that. Like I trust that my body is asking for like maybe some more vitamin B or some vitamin C or iron, like that my body knows what nutrients lacking, and that I can trust that my hunger for certain kinds of foods is going to help me provide what my body actually needs. So eating well from you might mean tracking certain macros to help manage a diagnosis, for example. Um, Eating well for you might mean eating a few more veggies, a few less chips. Eating well for you might mean just being more mindful, moving away from your work desk, maybe sitting outside while you're eating your lunch. So just start where you're at, let your journey be yours. If you're changing how you're eating out of shame or fear, that's okay too. Um, I kind of brushed through that sentence, but let me say that again. Um, just acknowledging that many of us do have levels of shame or fear, and confusion around food, and really wanting to do what's right and really not being sure, or really wanting something to change, or that shame, fear is a part of it. And so it's not that we're, please, please, please don't feel like you have to bypass shame or fear. But being in awareness of it is really important. Um, there's that piece of even if what you're eating were the most nutrient dense food possible and the best for you by all accounts, if there's some piece of you beating yourself up while eating it, it's probably not going to have its full nourishing effect, right? So it's how we feel about ourselves, um, is really important. And also that's that's a big equation. And so I'm not trying to say that you have to go fix that first, but I want you to just be in gentle acceptance or awareness of when or if that might be a part of your relationship to food sometimes, and to seek out um, the added support for that. Um, because the food, you're not the problem, the food's not the problem, but in your relationship with the food, if that's giving you information, what a gift that is. What a gift that is. Because that's going to be how your relationship to yourself, how your relationship to others, how your relationship to abundance, like all these things we've talked about, your relationship to pleasure, like whatever you're noticing in relationship to food, oh my God, how beautiful is that? Because once you start tending to it, it's going to shift all the others. And as I run out of battery, which I never thought was going to be a thing here, okay. And if and when you do have very deep reverence and love for your body, you're probably going to bypass a bag of Doritos to begin with, or you might be happy with a couple chips and not demolish a whole bag. So Laura Folks also spoke about this in our interview. One of the important stories from her personal journey with food was the day at work where she found herself walking past the box of donuts in the break room to her bag of carrot sticks in her lunch bag in the fridge. And she didn't have to use willpower to do that. She just really didn't want the sugary soft donut. She actually preferred the crunchy carrot sticks, and she had been looking forward to those as her snack since she packed her lunch that morning. I have two stories that I want to share. I once read about prisoners in an internment camp during World War II, where, of course, the inmates were starving, but they had access to berries. So there were three of them that were given some kind of work around the perimeter fence, and they found this little bunch of berries. There were three berries for three of them, and so they each got one berry. Two of the inmates ended up dying because they were actually inedible, toxic berries. But the one inmate survived. And the reason this person survived was because he had taken so much time with the experience of the berry. So initially, he just let the berry kind of roll around in his mouth. He was just feeling it with his tongue, just licking it, kind of sucking on a little bit. He'd get a little bit of juice out of it and just really savor that, then suck a little bit more juice out of it. And then when it finally came time to chew, he chewed and chewed and chewed and just extended that chewing experience for as long as humanly possible to really savor it and be in the full experience of it before finally swallowing it. So he was in full enjoyment and gratitude the entire time. And, whether or not this was or was not a true story, it's definitely stuck with me because to me, it was about the importance of being fully present and fully in gratitude and pleasure. And also it makes me think of homeopathy and all these things like where you get something down to like just the energetic essence of it and how something that otherwise would be poisonous then becomes healing. And so there's that piece of it too, right? Like, I believe this relates to every kind of experience, not just food. Um, and that's truly what all of these videos have been about. Like, can you really explore the fullest experience of what feels nourishing to you? And then be in witness to how your body can then use that experience in the most nourishing way. The second story I want to share. So I once worked at a chiropractic clinic. So there was a naturopathic doctor that came through town. So she had met a local family just in traveling and then was invited to spend some time with them. So she was going to be living with them for 6 months. Um, and she was vegan. But as she was staying with this family who was not vegan, um, she would graciously accept whatever meals they prepared. So her reason for being vegan was around her sensitivity to the energetics of the meat. And of course, she attributed that to the state that the animal was in the moments before being butchered for sale. And she said that when she was staying with this family, so they had a spiritual tradition of being in prayer and blessing of the food before every meal. So they would come together as a family, as a community, and say this blessing over the food. She could energetically sense the difference in the food after it had been blessed, and then was able to consume it because she could tell the difference and she could feel the difference in her body after consuming it as well. Um, so it didn't like, no matter where that animal was butchered, once the food had been blessed, she no longer was sensing the terror and the fear and, whatever state had been in the meat. Like it felt then different in her body. And so, and again, just, what it means to be in complete reverence for the food, like actual thankfulness and gratitude, and blessing food before consuming it. Um, mhm. So, there's that aspect of traditionally as human beings, breaking bread together as a means of connecting in safety and friendship. So there's a certain vulnerability while eating, and eating with others biologically is a signal of kinship and shared resources and a gesture of like, we're together, we have sustenance together. However, I'm sure everyone listening has also had an experience of like having to sit at the dinner table and tensions are high and there's been an argument and eat your food and like just having that sort of tense environment around you while eating and what that does to your belly as well. So, yeah, just consider what is the emotional environment that you're exposed to when you're eating. So, are you eating at your desk while working? Are you eating while scrolling? Are you watching news while eating? Are you eating while laughing and telling stories? Are you eating while listening to your favorite playlist? Are you eating while watching birds in the bird bath outside the window? Um, Two things I do want to bring to your attention is the consistency of access that most of us have to foods, as well as the regulations governing the foods that we have access to. So regarding consistency, our animal bodies are evolutionarily designed for feast or famine. So we're designed to have seasons of having abundance of food and then seasons of having scarcity. And in our current Western society, anyway, we have almost constant access to food. So we now live where we're waking up and having breakfast, we're having a morning snack, we're having lunch, we're having an after school snack, we're having supper, we're having a bedtime snack, and half of us are even raiding the fridge in the middle of the night when we're up in the middle of the night. So just considering what we're asking of our digestive organs when we are not giving them a break from constant digestion, and considering what that means to be eating out of habit and not with hunger. And so it's not just about what our biology is able to have capacity for, but also on other levels, like our nervous system capacity for experiences of different levels of resource and being okay with all of those different levels of resource. So there's that element of resilience that maybe we're not allowing our system to experience when we have constant access. And yeah, just sense of entitlement kind of maybe. And then about regulations. There are regulatory guidelines for all countries as to what foods make it to our shelves. So those of us living in North America, many of us are just beginning to realize and understand that there are certain foods that are allowed over here that can't get to the shelves in other countries. So prime example is that there are many North Americans who have issues with gluten that cannot eat any foods with gluten and grains here in the US or Canada, but going over to Europe and different countries in Europe have the ability to eat certain grains over there and not react. Like their guts are fine. And so there's just that, I just want to caution you that if you're reading the ingredients on packages, even if it's a brand that you grew up with, and as a kid, like you would eat this food and it had oats as the main ingredient, and you're still buying that brand and it still has oats as the main ingredient, the oats are not the same. That we have all this great technology, genetically modifying things for higher yields to provide more food, and but it's different. Like it is different, and our bodies are reacting differently to it. So just bringing some awareness around that. So it's, I mean, we do what we can, right? In terms of reading the ingredients list and choosing organic and like whatever else that might be for you. And also still pay attention to how your body's reacting and just be an awareness that the foods that we're growing and the foods that we're processing, or the ways that we're processing them, the ways that we're growing them, those things have changed. And so your body might be having some changes into how it can respond to those foods. So ultimately, there are the only two things that you need to pay attention to. How do you feel about the food you're eating as you eat it? How does your body feel after you eat it? That's it. So please note that homework this week, or for this episode, we're not asking you to change how you eat. We're not asking you to change what you eat. We're really just beginning to explore how you feel and exploring the dynamics and the relationship that you have to food and eating what's nourishing to your body. So homework number 1, how do you feel about the food you're eating as you eat it? Homework number 2, how does your body feel after you eat it? And of course, self-care and gratitude. My self-care is I'm going to spend a week in Montreal with my daughter. My gratitude is I have the resources to go spend a week in Montreal with my daughter. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you next time.